Star Wars is perhaps the richest and most expansive franchise of all time. An impossibly dense universe that fans can lose themselves in for, well, basically forever. It's a world that's become populated with literally thousands of characters over the last 45 years, and though we're all familiar with the principal players by now, it is easy to dismiss those smaller roles as being inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. That, of course, would be a mistake. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 Star Wars characters far more important than you realized. Number 10, Balvin. You probably won't remember his name, and you certainly don't know his face, but Imperial Gunnery Captain Balvin played a major, unintentional role in the Empire's downfall. See, at the very start of A New Hope, he famously told his subordinate officer, "Hold your fire, there's no life forms, it must have short-circuited," when said officer prepared to open fire on the escape pod jettisoned from the captured Tantive 4. But, of course, the escape pod in fact contained C-3PO and R2-D2, who were, in turn, able to flee to Tatooine with the Death Star plans, where they would eventually cross paths with Luke Skywalker. Had Balvin ordered the pod to be fired upon then, Luke's heroic rise would have likely been prevented, as would the fall of the Empire. Hilariously, in the wider universe, it's actually revealed that Balvin was encouraged not to fire upon the pod due to the Empire's obtuse promotion system, which was tied to an officer's hit-to-kill ratio. Had Balvin fired upon and exploded an empty pod, which wouldn't have counted as a kill, he would have been knocked down the pecking order for promotion, which is kind of amazing. Number 9, Baris Offy. Jedi Knight Baris Offy appeared in Attack of the Clones for all of about 30 seconds, hanging out in the background during a meeting of the Jedi Council, and later being seen fighting during the Battle of Geonosis. But Offy had a much larger role in the Clone Wars animated series, where it's revealed that she grew disillusioned with the Jedi throughout the Clone Wars, enough so that she eventually plotted the bombing of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, and framed her former friend Ahsoka Tano for it. This ended up having wide-reaching implications far beyond what she ever could have anticipated. For starters, Tano was herself exonerated for the bombing, but then refused an invitation to rejoin the Jedi Order, having lost faith in it. Tano then left to take part in the Siege of Mandalore, ensuring that she wasn't around for her master Anakin's turn to the dark side, which she potentially could have played a role in preventing. As a result, Offy's influence on the entire Skywalker saga is really quite immense when you think about it. Number 8, Poggle the Lesser. Forgive his silly name and just appreciate that Poggle the Lesser, who first appeared in Attack of the Clones, has a much larger role in proceedings than you probably remember. Sure, he's a public leader of the Geonosians during the Clone Wars, but it's often forgotten that Poggle both designed the Death Star and during the Battle of Geonosis gave the plans to Count Dooku, who then gave them to Palpatine, setting construction in motion. As such, Poggle had a pivotal role in how the Galactic Civil War played out, even if he doesn't usually get much recognition for it. But without his involvement, things would have turned out quite differently, and the Empire would have been looking elsewhere for somebody to design their epic superweapon. Number 7, Admiral Kendall Ozil. The most diehard Star Wars fans often credit Admiral Kendall Ozil with ruining basically everything for the Empire, enough so that there are even theories that he was actually a rebel spy all along. See, in The Empire Strikes Back, Ozil initially oversaw the Battle of Hoth, until he was force choked to death by Darth Vader for his incompetence. His big miscalculation? Well, that was pulling Empire ship the Executor out of lightspeed too close to the Hoth system, which allowed the rebels to quickly detect their presence and realize an attack was imminent, giving them precious time to shield up. Had this dude adopted Vader's preferred tactic of exiting lightspeed further out and entering Hoth more or less undetected, they could have conceivably crushed the rebels outright. But this one foolhardy decision gave the rebels the breather they desperately needed, and so his role in galactic history, albeit one he'd probably prefer not to be remembered for, shouldn't be underestimated. Number 6, Quinlan Voss. Casual Star Wars fans may not know the name Quinlan Voss, though they might remember the distinctive-looking individual hanging out in the background during Jar Jar Binks and Sebulba's confrontation on Tatooine in The Phantom Menace. At this point in time, the character didn't have any, well, character, but because he caught the eye of many fans watching the movie, he was eventually given a name and a wider backstory in various legend stories, such as Star Wars Republic. And long story short, Quinlan Voss was a Jedi Master with the ability to perceive people's memories by touching objects that they'd made contact with, making him an extremely skilled tracker. In the canon novel Dark Disciple, it's also revealed that Voss teamed up with Ventress on a mission to assassinate Count Dooku, a mission which, of course, failed. Voss has also appeared in an episode of The Clone Wars and has been referenced in both Revenge of the Sith and the recent Obi-Wan Kenobi series, the latter seemingly confirming both that he did indeed survive Order 66 and has been helping smuggle Jedi and Force-sensitive children to safety. So yeah, that's quite the fleshed out story for a cool looking guy seemingly just chilling out during The Phantom Menace. Number 5, Masameda. Masameda first appeared in The Phantom Menace and is best remembered by many Star Wars fans as that blue-collared guy often seen standing behind either Supreme Chancellor Valorum or later on Palpatine. Though you might assume that he was just a random, relatively inconsequential dignitary in the grand scheme of things, Masameda was actually the vice chair of the Galactic Senate, which eventually made him one of the most powerful people in the galaxy. Despite his lack of on-screen action though, he had a major role in the trajectory of Star Wars as we know it, aiding in Valorum's ousting while going on to serve Palpatine's interests, and being one of the very few aware of his Sith Lord alter ego, Darth Sidious. This guy served Palpatine throughout the Clone Wars and even managed to outlast his superior, yet perhaps his single most important action saw him eventually surrender the Empire to the New Republic. So yeah, not bad for a guy who most people remember for his unique look above all else. Number 4, Daven Felth. When stormtroopers are combing the Tatooine desert for rebel droids in A New Hope, one of them comes across a metal remnant from C-3PO and tells their superior officer, "Look sir, droids." Now you'd reasonably assume this stormtrooper was just a nameless nobody, but this being Star Wars, that of course is not the case at all. In Legends continuity, it's established that this stormtrooper goes by the name of Daven Felth, and though much of Felth's backstory is technically non-canon now, it's still fascinatingly comprehensive, and much of it doesn't directly contradict what we actually see on screen. It turns out that this guy was originally an ambitious Imperial officer who pointed out a fatal flaw in the design of the AT-ATs, prompting Colonel Maximilian Veers, who oversaw the development of the AT-ATs, to assign him to stormtrooper duty in an attempt to cover up his own embarrassing mistake. Ultimately, Felth came to appreciate the Empire as evil and decided to help the rebels by acting as a spy from within the Stormtroopers' ranks. Though it's basically self-parody at this point that even the most insignificant Star Wars characters have hilariously elaborate backstories, at least this one's really interesting, no matter its lack of canonicity. Number 3, Rick Olay. Rick Olay appears in The Phantom Menace as the pilot of Padme's ship while escaping Naboo, and though certainly not a background character who disappears into the periphery, few would assign him too much importance. Yet it's crucial to remember that Olay did one absolutely pivotal thing in The Phantom Menace, and that's he taught Anakin Skywalker how to pilot a ship. Without this impromptu lesson, Anakin wouldn't have been able to fly into the Federation droid control ship and destroy it from the inside. Olay's role is also significantly fleshed out in the expanded universe, where he joins a resistance group called the Amidalans, who committed themselves to avenging Padme's death. And in the 2020 comic Star Wars Darth Vader Volume 1 Number 4, Olay ends up crossing paths with Darth Vader himself, who promptly runs him through with a lightsaber, killing him dead, and further proving Anakin's monstrous transformation from the sweet boy he used to be. Number 2, Kiari Mundi. Though Kiari Mundi's infamous one-liner in Revenge of the Sith, that of course being, "What about the droid attack on the Wookiees," made him seem like more of a meme than an actual character, this Jedi High Council member is actually a vital piece of the narrative puzzle. See, even if Mundi's question seems a little bit off topic at first, it has major consequences for the rest of the prequel trilogy and beyond. After all, if Mundi hadn't mentioned the Wookiee attack, Yoda wouldn't have traveled to Kashyyyk to help defend it, and instead likely remained on Coruscant. Given that Anakin's turn to the dark side unfolds while Yoda is away, things would have almost certainly been very different if he remained on planet, and potentially prevented him from being corrupted by Palpatine. So, let's give Kiari Mundi a hand here for sending Yoda off on a mission when, in terms of the bigger picture, he desperately needed to stay put. Number 1. Finnish Valorum. Finnish Valorum was the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic, and as the only character on this list played by a major actor, the one you'll surely recognise above all others. Yet despite Terence Stamp's casting in the role, Valorum appears for all of around 2 minutes in The Phantom Menace, even if he was an instrumental figure in Palpatine's rise as Supreme Chancellor and later Galactic Emperor. After all, it was Valorum's inability to stem both corruption in the Galactic Senate and the bureaucratic trade crisis in Naboo, which allowed Palpatine to persuade Padme to call a vote of no confidence, resulting in Valorum being replaced with Palpatine himself. Basically, Valorum let Palpatine play him like a damn fiddle. He was a pawn who, through his political inaction, ultimately aided Palpatine's ascent to Galactic Emperor. So, that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Did you know about the wider lives of these characters? And are there any other secretly important ones I missed off here? Let me know, and while you're down there, could you please give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.